want to go ahead and I want to move on to the next part of my stream. And that part is my review for Andor Season 1. And I know that we've been doing, Andor watch parties for weeks now, Chad. I mean, God, at this point, nearly two or 3 months. And as you guys, know, I've been a fan of the show. I've recently talked about, obviously, on other platforms like Double Toasted. But I finally wanted to, talk about it here, go into more detail, just my general thoughts on the series itself, what Tony Gilroy and his various filmmakers were doing throughout it, the characters, the changes that the series made from, prototypical Star Wars chat. But for those who don't know, this is a live-action series on Disney+. It acts as both a prequel to Rogue One and obviously the original Star Wars trilogy. It follows the character Cassian Andor, who we first met in Rogue One, where in that he was a rebel spy. Here he's very much a thief, very much a selfish character. And this is taking place about 5 or so years before the events of Rogue One and the theft of the Death Star plans, and following his various family members and friends and other characters that he associated with during that time. Before I kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of the show itself, kind of just want to do my initial thoughts on Rogue One and the Cassian Andor character. Back in the day, Chad, when Disney first acquired, the Star Wars license, I was actually kind of excited about it. I mean, I was disappointed that they kind of retconned canon and got rid of the Legends materials and Grand Admiral Thrawn and all that, because I love those books. I was like, that's frustrating, but, maybe they'll eventually incorporate it back into Star Wars canon, which they have since then. But I felt like Disney was on the right path, especially after Star Wars The Force Awakens, which I still stand by, was a great foundational movie, did a lot of great things, introduced a lot of great characters, had some issues, made some mistakes. There's no doubt about that. Didn't need another Death Star. There were a couple sequences I thought were unnecessary, but overall I liked the movie. But then we had Rogue One that came out, which is like, okay, we're going to take an idea that I feel like a lot of people have asked, for a long time. In the original opening crawl for Star Wars A New Hope chat, you learned that the Rebel Alliance, certain people stole the Death Star plans. And it was like, who were those people? And that's what Rogue One follows and gets into. We learn all about those different individuals who were involved in the Death Star plans, and eventually getting into the Princess Leia, one of those characters being, Cassian Andor. And I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was great. I think in hindsight now, I think it's probably my favorite of the Disney era, one of the best Star Wars movies, I think, overall. I had a couple criticisms. I felt like it had almost too many characters. It feels like they could have truncated them, maybe combined characters. They didn't get as much as I would have liked. And I didn't particularly care for the Jyn Erso character. I thought she was just kind of flat throughout the entire movie. Not the fault of the lead actress. I just think, the material written for her was a little flat. But the characters that really stood out to me personally were Diego Luna as Cassian Andor and Alan Tudyk as K2SO, his droid partner. I thought they were great. I was like, I love these guys. And they've been my favorite characters in the Disney era, since that original movie came out. But obviously, Chad, for those of you who don't know, I mean, I think most of you do, in Rogue One, a lot of those lead characters from Jyn Erso to Cassian Andor, they died. They died when they were, killed on Scarif. They were destroyed by by the Death Star. And so that kind of brings us to this series. A whole bunch of shows were announced years ago. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett and Cassian Andor. I mean, a couple other things too, obviously. Ahsoka series and things. But even before that, then we had those 3 main shows. And I would have told you, it's like, I was excited for all 3 of these, but more so Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like, oh, okay, we're finally going to see Ewan McGregor with some good materials. Again, this is at the time. We didn't know. We're seeing some great material. We're going to explore a period of his life we never really got to see outside of, like, comics, maybe some books and things. Like, oh, it's going to be really interesting. And obviously Book of Boba Fett's like, oh, finally going to get Boba Fett. We're going to expand on him. We got those 2 shows, and they were what they were, Chad, which, in my opinion, very disappointing. Some highs, but mostly lows. And just frustrating watches overall. Just disappointing. Really disappointing, Chad. But Andor I was always interested in, but I couldn't say I was excited. I was like, okay, well, I like the character. I mean, but we already kind of know what happens to him, so it's like, I guess we'll see. But by the time we finally got it, Chad, when we got those first 3 episodes and we did the watch party form, I was very impressed. Initially, very impressed. Just in terms of the aesthetic of it, the tone it was setting. It was very much like Rogue One. But at that point, at least in those first 3 episodes, which kind of acts as its own little arc, if you will, every 3 or 4 episodes, its own little story, its own little arc, and, playing the larger series itself. That's what they all kind of felt like. That was Tony Gilroy's pitch. Getting these filmmakers in here to do the 3 or 4 episodes, and then it's like, okay, we move on to the next filmmaker. But I was just like, wow, this feels like Rogue One, but a Rogue One that has a little more confidence in itself, and where we don't mind spending a little more time with these characters, making it a bit of a slow burn, really just exploring certain aspects of the Star Wars universe, which never really been explored thoroughly before. And I'll tell you this, once we got to the middle of the series, the show really reveals what it's trying to say. And it's like what it's actually like day to day, living under fascism, and how people deal with it, how certain people indulge in that, and also exploring the people who try to subvert it and fight back against it. And, listen, yes, we know the Empire is evil. They blow up a planet in the original Star Wars, of course, but, we didn't know those people on Alderaan. I was like, okay. I mean, I'm sad. Leia's sad, I guess. And it's like, it's establishing, oh, shit, fuck. Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin, they're pretty bad. Empire's bad. Like, we get it, but to just get into, like, the day-to-day minutia of the bureaucracy of fascism and what people go through living, it's like, fuck, like, this show makes you despise the Empire, not go like, oh man, they're fucking cool in their ships. Like, I feel like a lot of us feel like, oh, I love the way the Stormtroopers look and the ships and the Star Destroyers. It's like, this makes you afraid of them. This makes you resent them. It really puts you into the mind of those characters that are fighting back and the insurmountable odds, but you just see just how the Empire, like how, I mean, I don't want to spoil certain things people haven't seen this show, but you get like an entire sequence of someone being tortured. It's not like, oh, we're going to shock you with a pokey stick or something. It's like, no, we have like a straight up Nazi doctor who recorded, like, who gleefully said, oh yeah, we took over this planet, we exterminated the native race, this sentient native race. But what we did was, when we had all these children, and we were going to kill them too. We were going to kill all the kids. But we thought, well, why don't we just record all their cries, all their them shouting and panicking as they're being slaughtered? Why don't we just record that and we just consistently loop it, and use that for torture? And gleefully explaining this, and then showing a character being forced to listen to this over and over and over and over again. It's like Jesus. But the thing is, it's not grand. It's not spectacular, Chad. It's nitty and it's gritty and it's mean. And I like that. It's shocking. This is a Star Wars show, because I know there's been people, pushing back on this show, saying like, this isn't Star Wars. It doesn't have lightsabers. It doesn't have pew pew pew. It doesn't have characters going, may the Force be with you. I'm like, listen, I'm a Star Wars fan. Grew up with this franchise. I love it, but that's okay. We don't always have to indulge in nostalgia and in the fandom itself. It's like this show, to me, it's very much set in the Star Wars universe. It's exploring something that was only been hinted at Star Wars, but it's also a Star Wars show that is made for adults. Straight up, it's made for adults. It's made for people who grew up with the original films in the 80s or in the 90s, but have now been watching for a long time dramatic television. Things like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul or House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, Succession, genre stuff, drama stuff, whatever it might be. That's what this show it's made for. I know you're thinking like, but Chris, it's Star Wars. Like, yes, it is Star Wars, but it's Star Wars with that type of writing, with that type of subtlety, and depth. And that's why it's standing. That's why so many people are praising it right now, and why I really encourage people to check this show out. I'm not that it's not being watched. It is being watched. It's just not being watched as much as the other Star Wars content, like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Boba Fett. And the various reasons are because Andor's not a legacy character. People don't know who he is outside of that first movie. People have known Obi-Wan, Boba Fett for nearly 40 years. So, but I highly recommend checking out the show for those various reasons. And again, to more of the cast itself, Chad. I mean, we have an all-star cast of people, and they take their time developing them and you understanding them and where they're all coming from. And we have the main lead in this, Diego Luna as Andor, and we're introduced him in Rogue One. And I love how we introduce Andor in Rogue One, because like, oh, this guy's like kind of like a darker version. He's a scoundrel, but he's like, oh shit, he does the dirty work. He does the Black Ops stuff, stuff for the rebellion. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Here, he's a very self-serving character. It's like, yeah, he has his own goals and his own motivations and things, but he's just looking out for himself. He's looking out for his own. That's what he's all about. And like how this show opens, with him again, similarly gunning down these people. I love the fact that it doesn't feel like Star Wars. That it feels like something out of Blade Runner, THX 1138, like all these really gritty 70s, 80s, and like dark sci-fi thrillers. I was like, oh, I love it. I thought that was great. And his character evolves. Like, we go from him being this really selfish, self-centered, dark person to being someone who is thinking of other people, who is changing. But, he has to go through traumatic experiences, Chad. It's not like, the original Star Wars where you have, Han Solo is always a good guy. He's a scoundrel, he's a rogue, but he always had a heart of gold. Like, Cassian does not have a heart of gold. He does not. Even by the point where we get to the end of this particular season, he's like, I'm ready to do what I need to do. But he's still fucked up because of everything that he's gone through. And I like that. I like that with him. And Diego Luna just has this darkness to his role, but also I like that we show his growth. And he does a great job, and it makes sense to where we find him in Rogue One. We're getting another season after this, and I want to continue to see like how he becomes even more fervent for the rebellion here. But his whole arc in the show is great. It's one of the best arcs in all of Star Wars. Certainly one of the best arcs in live-action Star Wars of all time, in my honest opinion, chat. I mean, I'm not saying just the Disney era. I'm not saying from the 90s. I'm saying the entirety of Star Wars since the original 77 film and now. It's one of the best arcs ever in the history of Star Wars. And then we kind of get into, the supporting cast of the show, and Adria Arjona, who has been in like a ton of stuff, and she's always been like one of the best things about whatever she's been in, but she's been in a lot of bad things, and it's not her fault. Like most recently, people probably know her for being the female lead in Morbius. She was in that movie, and barely gave her anything to do. She was good. She was holding her own, but gave her nothing to do. Here, we follow her as Bix Colleen, who is she's the ex-girlfriend, ex-lover of Cassian. She's one of the citizens of Ferrix's planet, which, Andor's made his home with his mother, played by Fiona Shaw. And, she's involved in the rebellion, but she's kind of on the outside. And she's trying to keep everyone just kind of calm. Like, she still has feelings for Andor, but she has a boyfriend, and he's jealous because of Andor. And, things go horribly wrong throughout this series for her. And when she goes through the fucking ringer, and I love how they showcase her trauma in here. Like, she sells it very, very well, but she's a strong character. But, what the Empire does to her is just like, damn. Like how we get those hints, like in A New Hope, like the Empire tortures Princess Leia, but we never really see that torture. It's just like, I'm just sleepy. She's laying on a bed. We see that probe droid coming towards her. We're like, I don't know. We see what happens to this woman. It is fucking rough by the time we get to the end of the series with her. She's great. And she's great. I want to see more of her. And then we have Stellan Skarsgård. There's like a lot of great... listen, chat, I'll have to admit, I'm a sucker for a good monologue. It's true. That's why I think I love Mike Flanagan so much, because he loves to have his characters monologue in whatever movie or show he's doing, whether it be Midnight Mass or Dr. Sleep. But I don't know. I'm in general. I just love a good monologue. And Stellan Skarsgård, he plays like one of those not sleeper agents, but one of those saboteurs, one of those guys that is the puppet master behind the scenes, trying to get the rebellion started, planning heists, has these agents embedded in all sorts of aspects of the Imperial hierarchy and all these cells of the rebellion scattered across the galaxy. But he probably gives the best performance in the entire... I mean, I don't know. I think you can argue for all these actors, but for me, maybe... And again, all these actors are doing a great job. No one's giving a bad performance. No one's giving a mediocre performance. Everyone's fucking great in this show, okay? So when I'm saying that he's, to me, like he's the best, I'm saying, but everyone else is equally amazing, right? Or just as good. But he has a moment in this show where someone asks him, what are you sacrificing? And he gives, at least at that point in the series, and I think in overall Star Wars, like the best monologue ever in Star Wars about sacrifice. And it's fucking great. And now it makes sense, like how the rebellion was formed because of people like him. These guys who said like, yeah, I'm doing horrible things to horrible people and to good people. And it's nasty work, and I'm gonna pay for it. I'm never gonna see that sunrise. I'm never gonna see that thing I dreamed of a free galaxy, okay? I'm gonna pay for everything. And I love that. And so he's like, I'm gonna sacrifice everything. And I'm like, oh, he kills it. And as soon as he shows up, even before then, he just commands room. He's the most fertile man on the planet, chat, and he lets you know he's the most fertile man and why he fermented rebellion across the galaxy. Only the most fertile man in the world can ferment rebellion across the galaxy. He does it. And he's great as Luthen. I love his performance. And then we have, listen, we also, now people are saying like, well, there's no legacy characters and there's no references and no nostalgia. It's like, there's a little bit here, but it's used in the context of the overall story. All right? We have, if I'm mispronouncing your name, my apologies, Genevieve O'Reilly, I think that's how you say her name, who returns as Mon Mothma. She famously played Mon Mothma in Revenge of the Sith. All of her scenes were cut out, but they brought her back for Rogue One. And here, she gets more material than she ever did in any of these other projects. Like, she is a supporting character in this show. And what I love about her role is not only do we learn more about Mon Mothma, what her home life is like, what her political life is like, what her function was in the rebellion during this point in time, but what she was going through as a person. As a character, we learn about her history. I mean, this feels like, people always say Star Wars doesn't need politics, and I always say, like, that's fucking stupid. I mean, literally, Star Wars is about a rebellion fighting against a tyrannical fascist empire. That's politics, baby. I don't know what to tell you. It's very political. I feel like the thing people criticize with Star Wars is like, yes, how George Lucas used politics with the Phantom Menace and trade routes and shit. It's like, what? The block it's like, it could be interesting. It could be an interesting topic, but in the way in which you presented it comes across boring and stupid. Here, I love how they handle the politics in this because it's very similar to more recent genre content, more dramatic content, like in Game of Thrones, like in House of Dragon. It's her stuff is very similar to that. And where we learn, they're straight up a Game of Thrones, where we learn in her culture, yeah, they sell the women off at 14 years old in high society, and to breed and to make more children. And she just chose like, well, I want to be a political operator. Right, to her husband, who's this dumbass, and he's great, and he does a great job. And she has a daughter who's resentful of her, who just wants to be a good little, I forget what her planet, what she represents, but she just wants to be the perfect little citizen, so then I could be sold off at 14 and breed. It's like, wow, everything they're playing with that, like, she's great, and I love her relationship with Luthen, the back and forth of that, and her weaving around all the political aspects of the Empire, trying to figure out who to trust, and it's that game. And so I know some people said, like, that stuff was boring. Like, I didn't find that boring. I thought that really interesting, really fascinating, how this is how the bureaucracy, this is how politics works in Star Wars, and they present it in a very mature way that makes sense, that doesn't come across unintentionally funny. I loved it. Speaking of other great characters, Fiona Shaw, for people of my generation, of our generation, chat, she's been a ton of stuff throughout her entire career. You probably best know her for playing Aunt Petunia in the Harry Potter series, where here she plays the adoptive mother of Andor, Mira Andor. And she is like this pillar within her community, chat, because everyone looks up to her. And she has one of the, other than Stellan Skarsgård's monologue, I feel like she has the second best or equally as best monologue as well in the last episode. She does such a great job of literally saying fucking stand up against the Empire. And because they do something with her character in the episode beforehand. I was like, oh really? Oh no. I was like, oh, that's how you're gonna end it? But she comes back in a really cool way. And the way in which they end it is so profoundly powerful. She said, fight these bastards. Fight the Empire. Like, it's fun. Apparently, it's I don't know if this is a rumor, but I think Tony Gilroy said he wanted her to say, fuck the Empire. I was like, yeah! But you're totally on her side. And, it instills rebellion. Everything about this series, and actually, let me put a pin in that, but this whole show is a powder keg. This whole show is a powder keg. It's about everything. It's about building it up. It's about tension. It's that anxiety. This is not a fun watch, which is not a bad thing. Like, I wouldn't say Breaking Bad. I wouldn't say Better Call Saul. I wouldn't say fucking House of the Dragon is a fun watch. These aren't exactly fun shows. but it's all about like these characters and the political act, how they're going to stab each other in the back. Like you have all these plans and you want them to go this way, but we all know they're not. How are they going to fall apart? And that's what this is. And I love that. And she does a great job. Like she has an amazing speech, an amazing monologue in this show that is just as good as Stellan Skarsgård's earlier. She fucking kills it. And then listen, those are all the heroic characters in the show, if you will. And even then, they're like their motivations are all kind of dubious and weird. And it's like, okay, it's for a good thing, but you're doing really bad things. You have some let me forget my mistake. There's another. We also have some guest stars in this series. Shad's already been promoted. I mean, I guess it's kind of a spoiler, but Andy Serkis is in this show. He's in there for about 3 or 4 episodes. He does a great job. He also gets a monologue too. Man, Tony Gilroy and his filmmakers, they love fucking monologues. I'm telling you. But he has a great monologue. He's in the prison episodes, and he's not Snoke or anything like that. That's not who he is. He's a completely new Star Wars character, and there is a series of episodes, about 4 episodes, where it's about or 3 or 4, about like a penal colony, like a prison. And that final episode in that arc, because they're all like 3 to 4 mini arcs in the entire season, how that last episode with him and what's going through his mind, you're thinking like, okay, why is he the way he is? Why is he acting this way? And then something happens. He gets his motivation to do what he needs to do. But then at the very end of the episode, you realize why he is so scared at the same time. It's like, oh my God. And it fucking rips your heart out. He is so good. He's so good. People forget. It's like, I think people just know him as like, oh, mocap, and not in any way dismiss his mocap performances like Gollum and Caesar. He should have gotten Oscar nominations. He should have got award recognition for those roles. I don't care what anyone says. Those are incredible roles. They're iconic and they're good for a reason. But people also forget, like, when he's not doing his mocap stuff, he is just as good. And here it proves it. He kills it. He kills it here. But then we also have the various villains in this series, chat. We have the incel of Star Wars, played by Kyle Soller plays, and this is such a 1970s, 80s sci-fi name, Cyril Karn, he just wants to be the perfect little jackboot Nazi, chat. Had his, work uniform, tailored and custom made, chat. Just wants to be a good, he has aspirations of joining the Empire, but he works for this, this corpo. That's the other thing about this show, too, just as an aside. I love how initially, the Empire is always present, but you don't really see the Empire at first, because the Empire has literally gotten so fucking big, so fat, so lazy, because it can't control everything. So it literally has to hire these corporate security forces to maintain order across the galaxy, because it grew too quickly. It's just like, fuck. And they're concentrating on building other things across the galaxy. And so I love that we have all these other organizations who have to work for the Empire, or working for the Empire, trying to maintain order and control. I thought that is really fascinating. I like that. And he works for one of those organizations. And he was like, oh shit, like, this guy's going to be a major operator. He's going to be a major antagonist in the show. And they circumvent your expectations, because even though he has these aspirations, he has no charisma when it comes to leading his troops. He is always second-guessing himself. He's somewhat incompetent. It's like, wow, this is, really interesting. And there's, for a lot of the episodes afterwards, whoever plays his mother in this show is amazing. She's like this. She just berates them. It's like, look at you. You fucked up your job, and now I got to call your uncle to get you a job in the Imperial bureaucratic offices. You're a loser. The mother's amazing. She's so funny. He's a stalker. Oh, yeah, and we'll get into the stalking a bit. But yeah, he's just this really creepy, wormy, slimy character. But but his whole motivation is, other than being horny later on in the series, for a particular character, he just wants to be the best Nazi he can be. And I was like, fuck. And he does it well, and the actor does it so well. It's a great performance. And then we get to probably one of the last main roles. And there's a lot of other roles we can all look at and praise, believe me. Everyone does a great job. But Denise Gough, I think Gough, is that your name? She plays ISB officer Deidre Miro. And, she's, again, kind of similar to Cyril. She has these aspirations of moving up in the ISB, which is the Imperial Security Bureau. These are kind of like the FBI. It's the FBI of the Empire, chat. They end conflicts before they even happen, right? There's like the Imperial Spy Agency. And she is taking a special interest in Andor and shutting this down, trying to figure out who Andor's handler is, and Stellan Skarsgård's Luthen, set up all these operations, but increasing the oppression on all these various planets and on Ferrix. She's great. She just, man, and she's with Cyril and her are the kind of villains where they're so good that you hate them. And it's like, that's when you know you have a really good performance. It's not kind of like, oh, I just hate them because they're bad. No, I hate them because they're so good at being bad. She has this little scowl all the time, just like, and she's so just manipulative. She's like, oh, I hate her. I hate her so much. And I can't wait for when they're going to eventually bring her back. And they do something interesting at the end of the last episode. I'm like, all right, how's this going to work? Oh, God, it's going to be the weirdest relationship ever. The weirdest relationship in Star Wars we've ever seen, chat. But yeah, she's so good. She's so good. How she's just playing everybody. Again, that's a lot of the Game of Thrones shit coming in here too. Just to, as a comparison, if you will. And then outside the performances, again, the technical aspects of the show. This is the best looking of the Star Wars TV shows, chat. I mean, just because of its direction, the scope. Again, you add so much to anything, chat, when you shoot on location. When I look at one of my biggest criticisms of, especially, Star Wars TV, live action Star Wars TV, Book of Boba Fett, certainly Kenobi, I noticed. Kenobi looks like a fucking, now more than ever, because people were like, oh, Chris, doesn't look like a fan film. I'm more than ever, I feel justified in saying, Kenobi, so much of Kenobi looks like a fucking fan film. It looks cheap as hell. If you were to put just images, the sequences, action sequences, even, or hell, just people fucking walking around, compare Kenobi stuff to Andor stuff, it's so stark. It's so stark, the contrast, chat. All right, where Andor looks like a movie and Kenobi looks like, I don't know, like a holiday special. It looks cheap in Kenobi. But because in Andor that you actually have some competent filmmakers, but you choose to shoot on location and you have these sets that feel real, and the sets that you return to, it's not like, we're done with that set, let's move on. I think that's the other thing too, like they chose to explore different places in the galaxy. What's funny, like we were on Coruscant, but we're seeing, I think, the best version of Coruscant ever. I love how they do Coruscant. But we go to all sorts of different places around the galaxy, but how they chose to make their sets and how they returned to some sets, everything felt real. Nothing felt like, yes, it's a set, but it feels like, no, this feels like a real place. And they nailed that so well. And the fact they shot on location, it gives other things like a sense of scale. So when they use CGI, when you see a huge fucking Star Destroyer above you, but the character is literally in the woods, literally in wherever they shot, it's like, oh, fuck. It's intimidating, and it feels great. The choreography is amazing. It's really on full display, I think, by the time you get to the third episode. After that, chat, I mean, there's some incredible action sequences, everything with there's a whole arc where they do a heist, amazing. Whole arc where they do a prison break, amazing. Kind of like the ending arc where they really find the rebellion, at least on this world, is happening, great. And the thing about the action choreography and the fighting, it's not overdone. Like I feel like in Star Wars, there's a lot of genre, or it could be in a lot of genre content in general. But let's focus on Star Wars. There tends to be just this melodrama to it. It's like when someone dies, it's like, oh no, go on, and like all that, and make a big deal. Here, when you fucking die, it's like, all right, you're dead. Move on. It's like, let's cut. Like, oh, you just met that character. You've been with this character for 3 episodes. Fuck him. He's dead. We gotta move on. We gotta keep going because it's that kind of thing. I was like, wow, it's brutal. The violence, the violence in the action. It's not quote unquote fun. It's well done, but it's gritty. It's nasty. It feels more like I guess you could make comparisons to spy thrillers. Well, Tony Gilroy probably he worked on the Bourne films and things, and so it feels action similar without the shaky cam, thankfully. Action that is similar to Jason Bourne. Maybe you can see a less fantastical Mission Impossible. I mean, there's a straight up sequence in this show that's like Mission Impossible, but it's all well done. And the other technical aspect, the music for the show is great. It's unlike anything we really heard in Star Wars. It's very synthy, very techno. I just like it. It's not like they have orchestral pieces, but it's not the bombastic John Williams type of orchestral stuff. Not even like Michael Giacchino like he did for Rogue One. It's like this is something really different. It kind of reminded me, at least for me, something similar to maybe like Mass Effect 1, compared to like kind of like a sci-fi prop or more another movie, Blade Runner. It's straight up like it feels like the score to Blade Runner or Blade Runner 2049. That's what it has more in common with. There's obvious that Tony Gilroy is a fan of those movies, or at least the aesthetics of those movies, and wanted to incorporate those in the Star Wars, including the music. And that was all great. And just kind of just wrapping up my final thoughts, Chad. This is the type of Star Wars content that needs to proliferate. and be used as a foundation for other Star Wars TV shows, films, animation. I'm not saying every piece of Star Wars content needs to be Andor now. I'm not saying that, but we need this. We need more of this. We do. We can always diversify. You can have stuff, obviously, for kids and everything. The Mandalorian is obviously successful, although I'm curious what they're going to do in season 3. I've completed the Mandalorian. This show, I'm going to tell you right now, this show is better. This is infinitely better than The Mandalorian. And I really enjoy The Mandalorian. But, one of the things I'm scared about The Mandalorian is just like, okay, is this going to just be Mandy and the kid? Is this going to be about Grogu the whole fucking time? Is this what I thought we moved on from this? Apparently not. So this one, it's like, no, this is mature. It's mature Star Wars. And we need more of that. This is the only way that the franchise is going to grow and move on. And it also proves that you don't need to rely on Skywalkers and Solos and nostalgia to have a successful Star Wars thing. At least well-written Star Wars material. You don't need that shit. And I hope people take this out, check this out, that they watch it, they give it a chance. Like, listen, I can understand this is a bit of a slow burn. It's taken its time, but it's taken its time for a reason. And I really want people to understand that going forward. Even if you don't love it, I feel like this is what the brand needs. This is what the franchise needs, what Star Wars needs, what Disney needs to do. And hoping more come. We're getting to season 2. We're getting a second season of this, and they're wrapping this up. I'd be really interested to see if Tony Gilroy would stick around and do more Star Wars content. These other filmmakers who kind of have a similar taste and aesthetics, would they want to do something? But let's indulge in this a little bit more, because we need to, and not indulge in some of the things that have been holding the series back for a very long time. So I highly recommend Andor, chat. If I would give this a rating, at least on the double toe scheme, this is a high full price to me. Like, do I have any issues with it? I could say maybe at certain points it feels a little slow, but in hindsight, I'm like, there was a reason for that. Maybe at the time when you're watching by episode 4, it's like, I'm not really understanding like why it might be, but then you get it after a while. And so, yeah, I think this is a high full price shit. This is the best Star Wars content. Certainly since Rogue One, Force Awakens. If you want to get even farther back, I'll go farther back. This is the best live action Star Wars content since probably The Empire Strikes Back. So please do check it out. I encourage you to do so. But that's just my opinions on the show, chat, and a lot of people might feel differently. There's a lot of different types of Star Wars out there. I love a lot of the Star Wars animated shows. Tales of Jedi I really like, at least the Count Dooku episodes. Bad Batch I'm a big fan of, and obviously I like a lot of the Clone Wars. So there's a lot you can do. And I'm hopeful for the future of the franchise after seeing something like this. It gives me a little more confidence. But that's just how I feel. Let me know how you guys felt.